I'm Katie Uhlmann reporting for Katie Chats at SMITHEE TV in downtown Toronto. I'm here with filmmaker Mark Grieco. How does it feel to have your award-winning film kicking off Doc Soup?
Well, it's pretty incredible. You know, this is something we've been waiting for a long time, and that's the Toronto premiere of this film. You know, because it really is something that during the 6 years making this film, always knew that this is the place where the message needs to be delivered and try to create awareness in the Toronto community of what some of these Canadian mining companies are doing in other parts of the world.
Absolutely. And are you worried about how the Canadian audience will respond to it, or do you think Canadians are already educated on how these Canadian mining companies are affecting Colombia, for instance, in this film, for the worse?
Well, I actually have a lot of hope because I think the difference between, I'm an American, and I think the difference between an American audience and a Canadian audience is that Americans are kind of already accustomed to being criticized in the world for the things, and rightly so, for some of the things that we do in the rest of the world. But I think the Canadians, kind of on a whole, feel like, well, we're not like Americans. We don't do those kinds of things. But if, you know, the reactions I've seen is that, oh, we didn't know this was going on. We didn't know these Canadian companies were doing these kinds of things. And so I have hope because it's kind of a shock. Mm-hmm. And so Canadians don't want to have that kind of stigma in the world. So I really feel that they would probably do something about it, more so than an American audience.
I will argue that Canadians have made a lot of mistakes as well, though. So can you speak a little bit to the importance of the cultural identity and how it's connected to the whole mining industry down in Colombia? Because you were living with these people, as you said, for 6 years. So how that was inspiring to you and to make this film?
Yeah, in Marmato, this is a 500-year-old mining town, mm-hmm. and for generations, every man, woman, and child has been connected to the mining. And so there's a mythology around it, you know, and this is pretty common in mining towns like this. Gold usually creates some kind of mythology or witchcraft and this kind of thing. But the important thing about the culture in Marmato is really how they have been ultimately a really united community. And they're united not only by way of the mining, but kind of the benefits that gold has produced for this culture, and that's that they live in this kind of oasis of peace and security in a country that lives in an internal conflict, has lived in an internal conflict for 50 years. And so the interesting thing and kind of the depressing thing is that the arrival of this Canadian company, which is now called Gran Colombia Gold, has broken that social fabric, has broken down kind of that cultural identity, because they're seeing that there's a division between the people, those who are for the project, those who are against it, and also they're unsure about the future of this 500-year-old culture. Where is it going to go? Where is my town going to go? What are my children going to do? When there was never the question of that before. Of course, you were going to be a miner just like your father, or you were going to be involved in mining in some way.
And speaking of the children, in the film I found there was a real theme of family, and you showed a lot of the beautiful families and how they're interacting with each other and how they're saying goodbye to each other with all the kisses and everything. So can you speak a little bit more to the importance of family within the culture?
Yeah, of course it's really important, and our main character, as soon as I met him and I started meeting his family, I knew that he was the perfect person to represent the town as a whole. Not because he has a strong position about what's going on in this town. In fact, his only strong position is that whatever happens, as long as it's the best future for my family, that's all I really care about. And you know, he wants to see what's going to happen with this kind of investment with this big Canadian mining company. But I also wanted to show that, you know, a lot of, I think, foreigners come to a place like Colombia, and especially to mining towns, and look at the way that they're living. As in fact, one of the Canadian drillers that's down there working for this company calls the miners primitive. And so it's this idea that they're coming from a developed nation to an underdeveloped nation, and that the real richness that they can bring is to bring them up into modernity, that they're living in the past. And so I wanted to show that maybe some of those things are true, and based on the way they're mining, but the real richness they have is that family, just like Jose Dumar's family. And that's something I think is important to show, that that's something that can be lost if this kind of project moves forward.
And in terms of the actual film shooting of this film, at times, you're in the mine and they're like blasting into the walls of the mine. Were you ever afraid from just technical standpoint, getting any of your footage at all at any point?
Sure. The mines are incredibly difficult to work in, not only for the miners themselves, but for someone trying to film something, it's a nightmare. You're talking about some of these mines are actually close to 50 degrees Celsius, or over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and high humidity, and so the camera instantly kind of fogs up. You can't really film for a long time in any one of those positions. But also you're in this closed space, almost a kilometer inside the earth, and they're setting off dynamite charges.
Yeah.
But what I did is, since the beginning, I went into the mines every day in the morning with the miners and stayed in the mine most of the day. And so I was trying to figure out, what is it really like to be a miner? And that was a way to get their trust, but also to understand it. How am I going to film this? How am I going to understand who they are? So often I would put the camera down and pick up a shovel or a pick and work with them. And so that way I kind of quickly got accustomed to being inside the mine, and then it became very natural, because you're just working alongside these people. They're doing it, I'm doing it. And I also really was, as a photographer, it's a visually incredible place. And so I really felt comfortable in the mines. I was really excited to walk into the mines every day.
And one of my favorite characters or subjects in the film was the elderly gentleman who worked in the mines as a kid and then ended up having his own mine, and has a little bit of an accident, which I won't say anything too much about near the end of the film. But can you speak a little bit to his passion about mining and how he just basically puts his life on the line to keep doing what he loves to do?
Yeah. Well, really, his passion is work. And he's a high energy guy. He's 74 years old, and one of the scenes in the film, he says he's climbing a mango tree and he's about 5 meters in the air looking for mangoes. I couldn't do that, and I'm less than half his age. And he looks down and he goes, I'm 74 years old and I'm still climbing trees and working in the mines. And he works every day in the mine, or he works off and on in the farm. But his passion is what he's built out of this hard work. And that, to him, what his hard work, the benefit of that is a family that has food on their plate every day. And he also now believes that, look, I've worked this hard in my life to have this property, and I've been a good businessman. It's my right. I can sell the mine if I want to. And so that character was important because, and he is important in the town, because it shows how suddenly the town started to get divided. Some people were ready to sell and believed that it was only the real future that Marmato had, that it had to become an industrialized project. And then the people who don't have anything to sell, who are just the miners, the workers, what are they going to do? It was important to show those two aspects, and also show it by way of a character who is, he's eloquent and he speaks kind of in parable, and he's very proud, and he's, to me, very photogenic. He's not just, I didn't choose him just because he was kind of the opposition to the majority of what people thought.
Very charming, I thought.
Very charming.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm not going to give away what happens, but it's kind of tragic because he's continuing to try to sell the mine for what he really knows it's worth. And that's why he's one of the last few people still owning a property in Marmato, because he's asking a fair price. And no one that sold their property really got a fair price. And so they are not negotiating with him.
And where's the best place for us as Canadians and citizens of this world to find out more information on the mines and Colombia and what's happening and how we can get involved in the conversation and help as well online?
Yeah. Well, we've been talking through the years as we were working down there with several organizations in Canada that either focus on Colombia as a place in which they want to better human rights, or specifically in mining. And one of those groups is called Mining Watch Canada. And they have they've actually been to Marmato several times, sent delegations. They're really concerned about what's going on there. And Colombia as a whole and Latin America as a whole, with these Canadian mining companies doing large investments there. So that's one organization. And the other that was an invited guest to one of our screenings the other night was Amnesty International, who is also heavily involved in indigenous rights and protection of indigenous communities. Just for example, in Marmato, the 17% of the population is indigenous, 55% is Afro-Colombian, and yet in the Constitution in Colombia, they're supposed to have certain protections to their communities for large investments like this, and this company has bypassed those laws or found loopholes in the laws. Those are two organizations that are kind of really involved in this right now. You can also go to our Facebook page for Marmato. We're going to constantly be updating information there.
Well, thank you so much, and congratulations on the film and also on being the first film in the Doc Soup monthly film screenings at Hot Docs.
Thanks so much, and thanks to Doc Soup. It was really incredible.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Katie Uhlmann reporting for Katie Chats in downtown Toronto.